Are your opponents crushing you with pillage, force throw, crate dragon, and when you play them, they're just okay? What's up, guys? KTOD Matty here, hitting you with 3 cards that I see a lot of people are playing wrong, and I'm going to give you tips how to get the most out of those and really crush your opponents. And then at the end of the video, stay tuned. I'm going to hit you with my Blue Han deck list. I know it's a popular deck. It's on the rise in the meta, and I think it's great. So I want to share what I got going on with it so you have another option to check out. So when I started playing with cards like Pillage and Force Throw, I had a lot of trouble. I knew that they were strong cards, but I wasn't getting the most out of them. Sometimes I'd fire off a Pillage and get my opponent down to 1 card, but they'd still be able to kind of maneuver the game. And even though I had more cards than them, I had the card advantage. That 2-for-1 didn't really do anything for me. Same with Force Throw. I mean, if I would be ditching a card out of their hand. Same thing with Force Throw. I'd be firing it off. They'd have someone with 6-7 health left, and I would do 3 damage, and I'd be like, oh man, I sat on that card all game, and it really didn't do anything for me. And so as I've been testing set 2 and getting ready for Gen Con and playing Gen Con, shout out to Gen Con, it was a great time. I noticed people playing against me either in prep or at the event were not getting the most out of these 3 cards I mentioned. And the reason I'm talking about Force Throw and Pillage together as a team, and I've also brought along their friend K2SO, because basically mostly is going to be in the context of blue-red hero, right? Because I'm hitting you with a deck list on the subject. And the reason I'm bringing all these cards together is because you need to use these cards in tandem. When you start out a match, you're going to be able to identify, is this a deck that I'm playing against that I'm going to need to strip their hand to get ahead, or am I going to have to, just survive, right? Am I really worried about discard against Sabine? Probably not. Am I worried about discard against Kira? Definitely. And that's one of the best ways to take her out game 1, right? So you identify your matchup early on and you say, okay, this is this type of game. So what does that mean? Well, that means that when I get my Force Throws, when I see my Pillages, I'm going to try to maneuver in a way that I can use them together. How do I do that, right? First things first, I need to take control of the board or pressure the board. And the reason I say that is because, and you've probably seen this, say you have the board control, right? I'm playing the game and somebody fires off a Pillage against me on turn 4 right away when I already kind of have the board going on. Okay, they get rid of 2 cards. I play my 4-drop, and now I'm like super ahead. Sure, they're going to have more cards, but the chance of them catching up from that are tough, and they're going to need a lot of resources to stabilize, okay? But now let's pitch another scenario. Let's pitch the scenario where it's like even on board, right? They play into you to try to take back the board, leaving 2 cards in hand, 6 resource turn. You're playing against Kira. What kind of things do they play on 7? They play their Vaders. They play their Mauls, right? That's when you fired it off. And how do we get them low on cards? We used our other cards. We used our Force Throws. We used our K2s. It's this constant game where you need to be watching how many cards they have in hand, enticing them to play into the board, right? So you're playing your units on curve. You're stripping with K2. You're going to try to land a Force unit and keep it alive. Throw there. Sometimes you're using Force Throw just for a cheeky 1-for-1, right? Oh, they claim 1 card in hand, 6 resources. They want to untap Invader. Well, you're going to Force Throw that, okay? Sure, sometimes you're going to hit air, but discard really works when you use it together and you're just finding these windows, okay? Because you draw 2 cards every turn of the game, they're going to draw something good. So it's really about getting them to make hard decisions, keep those expensive cards in hands, and that is when you Pillage and Force Throw. So to reiterate, 1, we're not just firing it off. We're using the effects together. We're playing the board before the hand, so that way they have to play cards into us. And at that point, then we discard their cards, and that's how we get most maximum value. The other thing we talked about very briefly, know the matchup, right? if you are playing against a deck that plays a ton of low-cost things, well, your Force Throw is probably not going to be doing that much unless you need to 2-for-1 yourself to take out something like a Kylo or something like a Sabine that they want to saber up, right? Those are the times, and you have identified it because you've read through the tea leaves of the matchup. What I do is I look at a matchup, and even if I'm not that familiar, I say, what cards are they playing? What cards am I playing? And I do like a little mental simulator to try to see how things are going to go. And when I play that out, that is how I identify, okay, they're going to be playing a ton of stuff. If I pillage them, it's really not going to do that much. They're going to stop resourcing at a certain point, and they're going to just keep drawing gas. So, okay, you know what? Pillage goes to the bin. Or, alternatively, the game works out in a way that they haven't used ECL, and you kind of know they're sitting on a Poe or a Wrecker, and you're able to do it. You've had a good, early game. Then, yeah, that's the game where you go, okay, this is the pillage game. I'm not going to resource it. But you really have to kind of take every game as it comes, see in the beginning how things are going to go, and then keep retraining yourself to say, okay, where's this game going? Where is this game going? Because you know what? That's the beauty of this game is sometimes you don't use all the cards with resourcing, but knowing when to maneuver them is so huge. And that's how you get the most out of these two cards. Crate Dragon. Okay? Hold on. Card's pretty insane, but it can be pretty freaking bad. You can time walk yourself really easily if you don't know what you're doing. Coming back to the principle of playing the board and knowing the matchup, okay? I've had so many people, I'm playing Kira, I have a grip, they claim early on 8 resources or even 7 if you're playing Han, and the next turn they immediately create Dragon, okay? They haven't, it's just the beginning of the end step of the game. I got 4 cards in my hand. What are the chances I've fell the Dragon, right? Okay, you time walked yourself. I got to take 4 or, lose a guy, and I still have 5 resources to do what I want. Great Dragon can be insane, but you can't, it's not one of those cards. It's not like a Snoke or, like an Avenger after a Super Laser Blast where, this is the big thing. Like, Great Dragon's insane, and if they don't have anything to deal with it, yeah, you just win the game. But, so many times people slammed it right away, 8 or 9, without kind of playing the attrition game and getting the important cards out of my hand first. And it was just so easy to deal with. Or, I hope, we've come a long way from this, but I have the board. I just hit into it a few times with some chumps and then play a card and act like nothing ever happened. There's going to be times where that's all you got is the Crate Dragon. You just got to make something happen, hope they goof up. But I think Crate is insane kind of after a slugfest, after using some of those cards that I talked about recently, stripping their hand, then playing it, or baiting out, fell the dragons with your Luke, or if you play Poe or something like that, getting those out of their hand and then playing Crate Dragon, that's how you do it. So while he's extremely powerful, he's just not this end the game right when you drop a card. And I think that's the mistake a lot of people are playing because they see it, it's their 9 drop, it's 10-10. But it's something you have to finesse in there. All right, so here we have it. Here's my testing version of Blue Han. I've toyed around with a lot of different versions, and I think I've identified some really strong cards to include in this list while also giving yourself the ability to be flexible into the meta. So kind of what I identified was I wanted to have an extra early drop in R2-D2 that could filter my deck because I think that in these control matchups, and that's kind of where I see the meta heading is more of a control mid-range, phase of the meta. At which point, let's talk about to the aggro boys about, crushing that in a couple weeks. But so I thought R2 would be a great addition. And I know some people shout out to Frank and some of his crew that have been playing it already. But I like that R2 gives me another thing to do on 1. You do have that cheeky free R2-D2 into Carabas play that I'm only playing 2 Carabas, so probably not going to come up that much. But I think what R2 does with the filtering, making sure you keep drawing gas, but also insulating yourself against some of the edict effects that blue-green villain have in Power of the Dark Side and Avenger. Gives you another little edge in that matchup, something that can really help you out as the game goes long. So he's kind of good in both ways. One card that I'm really high on from playing a lot of Ray is Village Protectors. Shout out to the Village people. I think that card is unbelievable. The way that decks need multiple actions to get into this, get through this 3-drop, can protect some of your injured units, can let you wall off. I've noticed Sabine have a bit of an issue against 30 HP bases where they consistently wall off. So that's why you can go Village Protectors into OB1. You also have Conquer Dawn Interceptors to really, prevent them from getting super head in damage, and then you can start to peel back the game with your bigger drops on, cheating out that curve. You have Chewbacca and Luke that come into play and do something immediately. Obi-Wan for 5, I think, is insane. I know some people have cut him, but I think that card's absolutely bonkers. I was running one Wrecker, but one of the issues I had with Wrecker is I don't want to get rid of a resource, especially when I'm playing tech, especially when I'm playing Crate Dragons and Chewbaccas and Redemptions. So I've seen people run Mace, and when he's in the right matchup, he can take over. Because he not only lets you hit the board, he lets you start pressuring fast. And that's one thing that decks can have trouble with. And I've seen people play the Forces with me. I've seen people play Sabers. Is because once you take over, you really want to switch into gunning right for their head and put the pressure on them, because you're playing such powerful units at a discounted rate. So I love Mace. I think that was a great call from everyone who's been playing him. And so, yeah, I mean, nothing is going to completely jump out. But the cool thing about this deck and this color palette is you can do these little tweaks to make it your own. So one thing that I did was, instead of playing open fires, which I think are completely reasonable and they might replace my Carabast, is I wanted something like Takedown. So I have my conditional removal, make an opening, Carabast, force throw, but then I needed something to counterbalance that, my takedowns of my Fell the Dragon, which are conditional but in a different way. They're easier to stick, right? A Carabast you need to finesse, a force throw you need to finesse a little bit, whereas takedown just does the thing. Fell the Dragon just does the thing. From there, just looking at the sideboard, I think, as games go late, tech is insane. You could definitely main deck 2. I'm doing a 1-1 right now. I think between the card draw you get, and the filtering, and the, when Yoda dies, or you put, experience on a Jedi with Obi, you're able to kind of get through a good amount of your deck in the late game. So I found 1 is good, but I can totally see you wanting to run 2. So coming back to my main point from the video of, like, you're using your force throws with your K2 and your pillage, that's going to take out a lot of mid-rangey decks. You're just going to get ahead, and the hits are just going to keep coming. Your Crate Dragon, this is a deck that exploits your opponent's deck list, in that, like, most people are playing like 1 to 2 Fell the Dragons. Well, look at all the things that they need to use Fell the Dragon on. A Grit Chewbacca, a Redemption, a Luke. When you start to attrition those cards out, that's when you drop a Crate Dragon, and it's just like game over. There's nothing they can do. So that's kind of how you play these cards in the context of this deck. I'm running 3 Vigilance right now. Shout out to my Vigilance boys. In the sideboard, I think that card is insane. 3, 6, 9, 10. Yeah, I'm good. But again, like I always say, make it your own. Maybe you want to do 2 and you want another tech in the 60, or you want an open fire. This deck is very malleable, and that's why I think Han Solo is so good and so well positioned in this meta. And I think, due to the popularity of the style of deck and the power level of the deck, I think this is going to take a pretty good market share in the way forward. So tweak these numbers how you see, but this is where I'm at. I'm loving it. I'm loving the Village Protectors. I've been toying between 2 and 3. I've tried taking out the force throws. I've been playing with and without them. So you really need to find the list that works for you. I cut Poe's. I found that Poe, while is like insane, and he's really good against like other mid-range decks because he's just such a value play. Like I said, like baiting out their removal. He wasn't like impacting my games a ton. I really always wanted to be hitting that Obi note. So that's why I peeled from 2 Poes to 1 Mace. Because I thought that Mace, by the time that I would play a Poe anyway, like I was resourcing him a lot around the 5-6 resource turn, or 4 or 5 resource turn, that then I might as well just go with Mace. And in my limited testing with Mace so far, he's been insane. And if you have a showdown Mace, I mean, come on, you got to rock that somewhere. So throw it in. But yeah, using your cards in connection, I think this deck is insane. And I think we're going to see a lot of it in the future. So shout me out in the comments. Let me know what your version looks like. Let me know if there's anything you saw that you picked up on, like, oh, I got to try that. Or maybe some cards that I'm not even thinking of that you think should be in here. Are you playing the lightsabers? Are you playing the forces with me? Let me know. I'd love to hear about it. So yeah, I think that with the tips I gave you in the start of the video and the list I gave you here, you're about to go crush your locals with Blue Han. Booyah. Also, let me know what blue base you're using. All right, bye. All right, guys, look, I thought the video was over, and I started testing another version of Blue Han. This is the Force Bros version. We're talking Rey. We're talking the forces with me. We're talking about winning. Hold on one second. Check this out. All right, so in the second version of Blue Han, I really wanted to see how we could take the Force trait a little further. So we added in Rey here, who, I mean, there's obvious synergy in the fact that you play early curved units and then heal them. But I talked about, you know, Blue Han's ability to kind of fight for the board well. And Rey can do that even better by keeping your units alive, making them use more cards from their hand and resources to try to deal with your board. Makes your discard better, makes pretty much everything you got going on better. And then the forces with me, and early forces with me on a Yoda or, you know, a Kanan, even a Conquerdon Interceptors if they go heavy space like some of the Blonde Sabines have against me. Shout out to Rebel Resource. Early forces with me is huge because you have the force unit trait. You know, you're actually getting that shield as well. It's going to keep guys alive. So you're just going to start running over them. The concession here is we get rid of the village people. One of my favorite cards. But the forces with me is going to kind of try to insulate your early drops in the same way as the village people. So it's kind of a similar trade-off there. And then you're getting the ability to add Rey to the mix instead of like a Poe. Still something they got to deal with. A little worse against Cunning, but still... paired with your other stuff, it's going to enable your force throw. It's going to enable your forces with me, so still very good. Another thing of note is I went back to the open fires in this matchup, and the reason for that is because we added in that 5-cost Rey. It's a little more expensive. I wanted to go down in price on my removal. That way, in later turns, you know, I can on 7, I can still like Rey and open fire. Where when you're trying to like curve out and get rid of somebody, 4 mana on the takedown can be a little much. So another option here. I think this version is really strong. The only thing that's kind of a little scary is we lose to R2 here. So you have pretty much 9, 3, 6. You have 9 like good turn 1 plays. Yoda turn 1 kind of stinks on ice. Interceptors can be okay. So that's the only thing is a little worse on turn 1. But other than that, once you get over that early stage, you're really cooking. So this list is hot. Mikey just ran it at locals and loved it. So I feel really good about it.